It starts with creating that environment where feedback is just understood to be a gift and people at all levels can speak their mind. Ideas come from all levels. We all kind of get stuck in the grind of, we've always done it a certain way, and it takes somebody asking questions, being curious, but you have to have that environment where those people are able to speak up first.
Hello, I'm your host, Sam East, and welcome to Diverse, a sweet podcast. And if you haven't yet, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Today's conversation is all about leading change, what that means for engineers, and what it actually looks like in action. I'm joined by two leaders from Turner Construction Company, Blanca Diaz, Vice President and Construction Executive, and Leah Turner-Jenkins, Special Projects Division Manager. Leah and Blanca both studied civil engineering at USC and have since taken different but equally inspiring paths through the industry. Thank you to Turner Construction for sponsoring this episode today. Blanca and Leah, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to Diverse.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So let's start off by diving into the origin story. If you've ever listened to an episode, we usually start things off here. Could you share an early memory, and we'll start with Leah, of when you first got interested in STEM and how that led you to your career in engineering?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's interesting. I recently found out that I am a fourth generation builder. I found that out from my dad, and it speaks volumes. So, I was a little kid interested in science and math, playing with my Legos, for hours. But I would also go to work with my dad after school and see his plans. He worked for the city of Berkeley and their housing and redevelopment agency. And so I just got exposed to so many different careers outside of your typical construction worker. So that really sparked an interest in the built environment. But as a child, I was very encouraged to just explore, and my parents really encouraged my interests. And I had a great high school teacher, Miss Bowley, my chemistry teacher, that was like, I think you need to think about engineering. And I was like, I want to be a lawyer. What do you say? And she was like, why don't you check it out? So I did over the summer, and I loved it, was immediately like, yep, this is what I'm going to do. So I combined, this family legacy, apparently, with my love of engineering, and chose USC with a civil engineering major with an emphasis in construction. Met Blanca at USC. And then I actually ended up interning with Turner Construction right out of high school. So that's my origin story.
Wow, that is a very smooth origin story. It all seems to really make sense. Everything kind of, I'm sure there were hurdles that you had to overcome, no doubt, but it feels like, it all made sense when you look back on it.
It did. I was one of those kids that knew what they wanted to do at 16.
Wow, that's incredible. And you stuck with it.
And I stuck with it.
So you met Blanca in school. Blanca, can you tell us your origin story, those, early STEM memories, what really got you down this career path?
Sure. And I love that. I think our stories are going to be pretty different, but one commonality, which is I'll share, and is pretty awesome. So unlike Leah, I honestly didn't have any really exposure to engineering, building, construction kind of growing up. I was always really good at math. That was just something I really enjoyed, but truthfully didn't really know kind of what careers existed with math specifically. And actually, up until probably my junior year of high school, I thought I was going to be a child psychologist. I'm not sure how I decided that, but that's what I thought. It was actually, this is where the commonality is. I had a teacher, Miss Butler, my calculus teacher in junior year, was the first one to just bring up the concept of engineering. She's like, you're really good at math. Have you thought about this? I kind of nodded my head, but didn't really know what she was talking about, truthfully. And I remember actually going to the library, just research engineering. I read through engineering fields like a menu almost, and I kind of went through all the different ones. And I remember construction immediately kind of sparked my interest. And that was kind of a memory that I feel was really pivotal, and immediately switched from child psychology to civil engineering is what I decided. And kind of a complimentary memory is that I had a good friend who at the time was a senior, so they were getting ready to declare a major and decide they were pursuing engineering in their college studies. And I remember we were driving down the road to school and he looked at me and said, "Wouldn't it be cool to say you built that?" And like that was that moment where I was like, yeah, that would be really cool. I want to be able to say I built things. And then, like Leah, once I decided, it was great. Like every class I took just reinforced how much I enjoyed it and how much I really wanted to, continue my career there. So it's been fun.
That commonality of you both had a teacher that nudged you in the direction of this passion. Do either of you still talk to that teacher who kind of set you on this path?
Unfortunately, the teacher that I had has passed, but I did get a chance to connect with her at some point, and she found out that I was in engineering and doing not really civil engineering, but something related to it. And she was just so excited to see a student that took her advice, I think. And
Yeah,
she was an awesome, awesome teacher. So I did get a chance to see her again.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I unfortunately have not had a chance to kind of go back to Miss Butler and let her know that she literally changed the path of my career.
Well, shout out to both of them though, because perhaps without that nudging that, hey, you're really gifted in this area, have you considered, might have ended up differently. Child psychology, perhaps.
There's nothing more precious in this world than a good teacher.
It's so true. They deserve all the flowers. And so you both studied civil engineering at USC, but like we've touched on, the career trajectories have taken on different directions. We'll start with Blanca on this. Can you talk about what influenced the path that you chose within the construction industry and how you navigated those decisions along the way?
Sure. I think Leah noted she interned with Turner Construction. I actually interned with a separate GC, was doing more construction management versus general contracting, and then ended up working for that company one more year after I graduated. So Leah was lucky enough to immediately find Turner. I took a slight detour to get there. But once I joined Turner, I started in pre-con. Shortly after some time in pre-con, my passion has really been out kind of on job sites in the field, watching the day-to-day construction. Every assignment past that has been project specific. What I'll call pivotal moments, I'll say, in my career was pretty early on. I was a young engineer, and there was an email that said they had immediate need in Mexico for an international assignment. I found that to be the most exciting thing ever because I am bilingual. So I thought it was perfect. I could try something international. I could leverage the fact that I spoke the language, and I very actively pursued the opportunity. And I remember our GM at the time telling me, most people are running away from this one. And I was like, that's interesting. And honestly, I was young and excited to just try something new. And I did. And I got to spend about a year and a half working there. Great exposure, just perspective of how things happen outside the US. There's lots of challenges on the job, but also really reflect on the fact that sometimes you learn the most from your most challenging projects. And then really allowed me to understand what it meant to kind of step out the comfort of the place I had grown and lived my entire life. So I think it provided me with a lot of self growth. I proved to myself that I could do that, and it was a really unique experience. Then kind of continued my career. That international opportunity, I think, also expanded exposure for me. I was able to connect with lots of senior leadership within the company just because I was taking on that assignment. And part of that, those conversations, I remember talking to my GM and kind of nudging for an opportunity that I knew was upcoming to be on a pretty monumental project at the time in LA, which was going to be a high rise. As I expanded my time in Mexico, I also kept asking, okay, but I really want to go on that project when I get back. And so that was a fun time. And then ultimately made my way back to that high rise project, senior engineer to kind of project manager. And then at that point, having been part of a really large project, the next natural thing felt to continue kind of that large project path. And ultimately, I actually raised my hand and said, I'd rather do a small project because I want to try a different market. Up to that point, I had done mostly commercial. So I wanted to try healthcare. And I knew as a new healthcare person, I needed to start a little bit smaller. I also wanted to try PM opportunity. And so I knew I wanted to kind of own an entire project. And that was kind of the size project that would allow me to do that. So I actually jumped from what was at the time $1 billion project to a very small project that was healthcare that allowed me to do that, but was able to diversify market sectors. Continued kind of down that path, did healthcare for a bit, and then got tapped on the shoulder again about an opportunity in the Midwest. And I didn't really know much about the Midwest. I'm a West Coast girl, had lived and grown up in California my whole life. But I kind of said, okay, let's hear about it. Got the opportunity to really enter the technology market with Turner. So I have been working on data centers for the last going on 5 years in Iowa and then now in Nebraska. I think that one was pivotal just because it allowed me to enter one more market and kind of take part in a market that is currently probably a large percentage of the work that we do right now. So it's been a very exciting time.
You had mentioned there that you learned so much from your most challenging projects, and you also touched on advocating for yourself really to get onto the projects that you wanted to. What did advocating for yourself look like? Because we talk a lot about this on the podcast. What does it look like and feel like to put up your hand and push for the trajectory that you want to see for yourself?
I've been fortunate. It's always, I think, been very welcomed. And I've learned in the process that, my leaders along the way, they're managing multiple individuals and they don't always know what each of them is looking for, right? So they may have certain ideas. And some of it is just letting people know what your desire is so that they know, because they might be thinking it's something else. On the other side of that, I think I've always been patient with it. That's worked out well with Turner, and every opportunity that I've asked for or kind of thrown my name in the hat for is it may not always be immediate. As long as the company is invested in you, you'll eventually get there. You do have to be a little bit patient sometimes, just because things don't always happen overnight. We may not have that specific project or need, but when it does become available, things seem to work out.
And Leah, what about you? Can you talk about what influenced the path you chose within the construction industry?
It's interesting. I started out my career at Turner, after all the internships as an assistant superintendent on a pretty large, would probably be maybe like $1 billion project. Back then it was 300 million, but it was a city county hospital replacement project in San Francisco. So you can imagine it was a pretty large team. So to enter into my career in this very large group, we were just starting to pilot cohabitation of general contracting team plus the design team. The owner had some seats on site. So it was very dynamic, to say the least. And here I am, this, little college graduate out in the field trying to navigate how to provide direction to, construction specialists that have been doing this, as they'd love to say it, longer than I'd been alive. It was a really interesting entry into construction, one that I really value. I got to see and learn so much, but I also really appreciate the advocates that I had, the people that watched out for me and, helped guide my interactions. I had some really great superintendent leadership on that project, but that's how I started. On that same project, I transitioned to doing an engineering assignment. After I left that project, I went into cost engineering, which was a little different. It's financial auditing of our jobs and budget management and things of that nature. So it was a bit of a departure from what I knew, but it afforded me so many different opportunities within the company to really participate in initiative change. Turner Construction made a major shift from our financial platform somewhere around 2010, 2012, something like that. And I got to participate with this group of people internally to make that shift. If you could imagine all of our financials, all of our how we do business transition from one system to another. So it was a very daunting task, but I got to help create policy. I got to, help define what our transition was going to look like. So I got a lot of exposure to the inner workings of Turner and how we do business and what's important for business at Turner Construction. And I think that really helped open my eyes to the business side of it, which I had not planned to even consider at Turner. I wanted to just keep building things. Like I wanted to walk around and say, I built that. So that was a different opportunity. After that, I went back into project life, doing engineering roles and PMing roles. I bounced back and forth between the big jobs and smaller jobs within the special projects division. So that was my exposure to special projects. I loved that. Those jobs are quick, they're intense, but you get so much exposure to different market segments. I mean, you're literally in someone's hospital wing trying to, upgrade their systems or whatever. So you learn a little bit about every industry. And that was really exciting to me. I wanted to make sure that I had a very diverse experience in different market segments because both Blanca and I entered the workforce during the recession. So we were very lucky. And so we saw certain market segments just kind of tank. And so I was like, you know what? I want to have some diversity here. I want to know a little bit about everything and not be an expert in one thing. So that really drove what I also raised my hand to participate in. I still remember there was a residential project, which we very rarely do at Turner, with a known client. And I had a few choices presented in front of me, and I chose that one. And it wasn't an opportunity that would like advance my title or anything, but it was an opportunity to just do something and get exposed to a type of build delivery that I may not ever have again. So I was like, I want to do that. And a lot of people were surprised. They were like, wait, what? Why would you choose that? That was a driving factor. I wanted the diversity of the market segments. And it was an awesome job. It was a project that really allowed me to grow as a leader. I had an opportunity. This is somewhat of a pivotal moment, I think, for me, but I had an opportunity to participate in a multicultural women's leadership program at USC. That really just opened my eyes. It was such a great cohort of women that were in so many different industries, but we were all facing a lot of the same challenges. So it was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Like we're all going through these types of things together. It really helped me define my leadership style. And so I came out of that just knowing that I wanted really broad impact. And, I started finding board interests and, raising my hand for initiative changes at Turner. And so I participated in a lot of those. But I got an ask from Lisa Ballantyne, who is going to be on the panel at the conference, but she was like, so what do you want to do? You did all this leadership development. What do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be our operations manager. That's the path I want to go. And that role supports our projects, but also supports how we do business in a specific region. And she was like, okay. And within, a few months, I was an operations manager in our special projects division. So I agree with Blanca. It's really important to really just explore the options that are there, but know what direction you want to go in. Because if you're ever asked, and great managers will seek and ask, where do you want to go? What's next? Where do you see your career going? And I was lucky in that moment to finally have an answer, and that charted me down this path of business unit leadership.
You both have had such inspiring and different trajectories. And as leaders in the field, we'll start with Leah on this. What does the phrase leading change mean to you? Because change is a constant, especially in the construction industry.
Yeah. Every single moment is different, but that's what's really cool about it. And that's what keeps me motivated to come back every day, is that the day is different. I would say leading change for me really just means being curious and observant and as resourceful as possible. And you have to put your head up at some point and look at the landscape and what can we be doing differently? What else is out there? What can we be doing more efficiently? What isn't working? And being bold enough and empowered enough to say, you know what, if not you, then who? Who's going to do it? Be empowered to at least raise your voice, And if, not that, find your way to peer, raise your voice and make some change. But I think it really just starts with being observant. What is the landscape? What is happening here? How can I help impact something? Or, how can I advocate for someone else that's being overlooked? Or just being a member of the community that you're in. I think that really helps to drive change and lead change, and just being bold and empowered. Sometimes you are met absolutely with resistance, but having conviction and socializing those things and getting support from your peers or from other leaders and things of that nature, you can do a lot. I have seen so many people from just interns, ground up, groundswell of things that have literally moved the engine, the train that is Turner Construction, moved it in a different direction. And, I'm appreciative that Turner listens, but you can do that at any station.
I like what you said there. Leading change. It almost sounds like a one person job, but what you included in what you described was it's being a member of the community. It's almost looking out for the greater good.
Yeah, 100%.
Blanca, what about you? Leading change. What does that phrase mean to you?
It starts with creating that environment where feedback is just understood to be a gift and people at all levels can speak their mind because really, like Leah said, ideas come from all levels. We all kind of get stuck in the grind of, we've always done it a certain way, and it takes somebody asking questions, being curious, saying like, I don't like that this takes this long to do. It could be done faster, easier, more productively. But you have to have that environment where those people are able to speak up first, for sure. I think it means being open and willing to try the things, right? When people are voicing opinions, you have to give them the opportunity to try things, own something, empower them to influence others, create change. And like Leah said, change is hard for people. We're trying to implement change on small jobs, on large jobs, things that potentially impact small workforce, large workforce. So I think planning and intentionality and scaling of change is important. I'm always a big advocate of very intentional messaging around change to different stakeholders because the why may look different for everybody. And I think it's so important for people to understand the why so that they can work through the clunkiness of the change, right? It's usually not perfect when you're starting something, when you're trying something. But if you can get everybody rallied on kind of the end goal, then they're willing to kind of, stick with it, stick with you until you get there.
Knowing the why, like knowing your North Star when you're heading into a project.
Yes, absolutely. If we get through this is the value that we're going to get out of this as a team. Letting that focus the team to work through those intermediate hurdles as we get there.
Well, Turner is one of the biggest names in construction. Blanca, what has it been like building your career there? And then how does the company support women in particular navigating the field?
It's been great. I tell people there's a reason why I have been with Turner as long as I have. I mean, pretty much the majority of my career, aside from an internship in 1 year. I love the people. I mentioned a culture where feedback and transparency and all levels are empowered is important. And I think that is something that is very key in the values of Turner. My career has taken me across multiple BUs, and I can definitively say anytime I step on a Turner project, it feels like home. And that's really important because there's just consistency of values and culture. And I think that speaks to really good leadership. So I've really appreciated that about Turner. In terms of support, both Leah and I can attest to we have raised our hand and said, this is the next opportunity I would like. And the company has provided that for us. There's a huge investment. We like to say that, people are our biggest asset. And I think the actions really reflect that in terms of investment in training, growth, development, programs like the one Leah was a part of. I've gotten to be a part of different coaching sessions, etc., just to ensure that we all have the right tools to continue to grow within the company. So that's something that I think I appreciate dearly is the people we work with have a passion and are aligned with those core values. So, like I said, wherever you go, whether I'm visiting or actually working in a different business unit, different state, internationally, it's the same culture, and that's great.
I love that because a lot of people, a lot of companies, big ones, will say that that's their initiative, will say that's the goal, but like you said, they're putting practice into it. There's, people who are living by that.
Yeah. Since you mentioned big companies, I think that's something that I think is very unique about Turner. We are a big company, but we have a very, I'll say, small family feel. So you get the support of a very large company in terms of resources, ability to learn from others, training, etc. But at the same time, you get the values of a small company where it feels very, your team is your unit, your community, as was mentioned earlier. You know each other, you get to know each other. We really operate as a small company. People traditionally think of as a small company.
And Leah, what about you building your career at Turner? What's that been like, and how does the company support women navigating the field?
I absolutely echo so much of what Blanca shared. It's really interesting to be a part of a company. Literally, we're talking about 12,000 employees, but there is so much commonality. And that's certainly what has kept me at Turner. It's not like we're building things that our competitors aren't, right? But the company still just has so much diversity in terms of things that you can pursue, careers that you can have. There's an encouragement to bounce around, raise your hand to go to a different business unit or even international in Blanca's case, or try things that are completely out of the vein that you thought you signed up for. I just feel like I've had so many different, really incredible experiences at Turner. I look at where we're headed and I'm having my own thoughts now, like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? There's so many different things that I could possibly do. Like, who says that 20 years in, where they're like, I am still very curious about what the possibilities are in this company. And I would say, as a woman coming up in Turner, I've been very, very fortunate to have male leaders, female leaders, peers that have really supported me, especially in roles in the field. And I will say none of that was easy, but to have the support, to have people looking out for you, to have people backing you up and advocating for you feels so validating. And that's been my experience at Turner. I can't say the same for some of my peers that either worked at Turner and gone somewhere else. It's just not the same. The grass is not greener. It's been a fun roller coaster of a ride. I appreciate the intentionality that Turner puts behind women. When I started in the Bay Area, we had a female executive, which was like, oh my gosh, there's a female executive. This is amazing. She started a professional women's group in our business unit. And so I kind of got to start my career in this space where the women in the business unit were coming together, supporting development and growth for each other, having a safe space to kind of talk about their experiences. And that's how my community kind of started in the Bay Area. And that's now grown into the Women's Network ERG. We have a Pride ERG. We have something for our future leaders. I've seen all of that develop over time in the company, and that's been great to see. But those conversations were starting way before they were the buzz word or the topic. So I've always seen Turner kind of lead the charge, and that's what's been exciting for me to work at Turner is we are truly leading the industry. That's what you can do when you're a big engine, and Turner takes that responsibility to heart. I love that because that's how I operate. If we have influence, you need to be responsible with that influence, and Turner really is.
And considering both of you have spent such a large chunk of your careers with this company, you can both really vouch for that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've seen the good times and the bad times, but we're in a great place right now.
We're both going to do some brainstorming on the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. A look ahead. A look ahead. This has been a great conversation. Before we let you two go, and we'll start with Leah, what closing thoughts do you have for women or even allies listening who want to lead change and make an impact in their careers, even if they're, not quite in a leadership position yet? What would you pass on to them?
The advice I would give women that are looking to lead change in any position at any place in their career is to be bold, be empowered. Don't think that your idea is any less than anyone else's idea. Just speak up and really find your community. It's so important. And I hope that this is going to be a topic of the conference, but finding your sponsors, finding your mentors, having a safe space to bounce ideas off of someone that does have influence in the company or, can help champion your idea is really, really important. So, if you're in a company, if you're in a class, if you're anywhere else, don't isolate yourself, build your community, build that friendship and camaraderie and networking with folks at your level. You don't have to go to build a relationship with the president of the company, at such and such contractor. Build your community with your peers, because guess what? You're all going to rise together. Then you are that person that's calling your friend at another company when you need to make something move. So just be confident in your ideas, be confident in your voice. It is so important that you speak up, and you may not be heard right away, but continue to speak up. Voice your ideas and opinions, and you will absolutely lead change in that way.
I love that. And Blanca, what about you? Some closing thoughts for women or allies who want to lead change?
I'll say one big thing is don't think that you have to wait to be a manager or somebody's boss to be a leader. I think we often associate leaders and managers as the same thing, but leadership is something you can always be doing whether or not you have direct reports. So we talked about, being able to speak up, speak your mind, bring forth your ideas, find things that can be better, that can be fixed. I like to say to my staff, fix what bugs you. What are the things that frustrate you that need better solutions? Those are opportunities for us to really make an impact or influence change. And then ask questions. Asking questions just allows you to continue to grow, and it's okay. And it creates that general culture where that interchange of feedback is created, really. And the last thing I'll say is also find that company, place, career that aligns with the ability to do all those things, right? So if you're at a place where for whatever reason that is not welcomed, you're feeling like you can't voice your opinion, you can't speak your mind, maybe that's not the best place to be. Leah and I are happy to have found a great community home family with Turner Construction. And we can both say we've stayed here this long because we felt empowered to grow and to be leaders from day one. Our opinions were valued. People listened to us. We were heard. Obviously, our experience was much reduced when we started, but we've been able to grow with the company. So find that place that's going to promote your growth and empower you.
That's a good message for a lot of people to hear, especially if they're looking to build, looking to change the career trajectory, perhaps. Really important things to keep in mind. Thank you again, Blanca, Leah from Turner Construction Company. You both gave us a lot to think on what it means to show up as a leader at any stage in your career. Thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Thanks for having us.
And for our listeners who want to keep the conversation going, Blanca will be speaking on a panel about leading change at the We25 conference in New Orleans. We25 is happening October 23rd to 25th, and it's a great opportunity to hear more about how women at Turner and across engineering are driving impact in the field. Be sure to stop by the We25 panel, Breaking Ground, Building Futures, Women Leading the Way, with Blanca and 3 women from Turner Construction, Thursday, October 23rd at 2:45 p.m. Turner will also be represented at the We25 Career Fair, so you will definitely want to visit their booths and speak to their team about opportunities to join Turner and become a part of their mission and company. To snag your spot at We25, you can register today at we25.swe.org. I'm Sam East, and from all of us at SWE, thank you for listening.